It is no secret that PC building has gotten more expensive and it's becoming a challenge for many people. So something I wanted to do was identify perhaps if there are areas that we can potentially spend a little less money and still be overall satisfied with the performance of our gaming PC. So in today's video, I have two different PCs behind me and we're going to test whether your speed of your RAM actually impacts your performance that much. So I have two different PCs. This first one here is an AM5. It's paired with a Ryzen 7 8700F, an RTX 2080 Ti, and it has 32 gigabytes of this T-Force Vulkan 6000 megahertz RAM. On the PC to my right here, we have the AM4 platform with a Ryzen 5 5600X, an RX 9070 XT, and then we're actually going to be using two different sets of RAM for this particular test here. So we have a Patriot Viper. This is a speed of 2133 megahertz. It's actually only 8 gigabytes total, so two 4 gigabyte sticks. I didn't realize that until I started filming. So to make this fair, even though I have 32 gigs here of this Corsair Vengeance LPX that runs at 3200 megahertz, we're actually only going to use one stick to make it 16 to make it kind of fair. Now, what we're going to do in this test is we're going to take both of these PCs and have different speeds of RAM on two different games and compare them with the gaming performance at the lowest settings possible and then the game set to ultra settings, and this will be on 1440p. So on the AM5, obviously we don't have two different sets of RAM. If you aren't aware, when you have a motherboard, most of the time in your BIOS setting, it defaults your RAM to a slower speed than it comes stock at. So when I turn on the PC, it generally is going to run this RAM instead of 6000 at 4800 megahertz. So what we're going to do is enable XMP, and that allows your RAM to run at the full speed that it's supposed to. So we're going to run it at the 4800, and then we're going to enable it for it to run at the full 6000 megahertz. And then on the AM4 platform, we'll do, just swap out the RAM. So we'll have the 8 gigabytes of 2133, and then we'll have 16 gigabytes of 3200 megahertz. As I mentioned, the objective is just to see if there is a major difference. Now, obviously, there are components that are going to make a big factor and change the outcome. You know, if you take a look at the graphics card or the CPU, those are going to matter as well, but we're going to try to see if there is a specific influence from the speed of the RAM. For this particular test, we're going to be using two games. Arc Raiders is super popular right now, so we're going to play that game, and then we're going to test out Black Myth Wukong because it's just a really demanding game. Now, before we get into the testing, I do want to let you guys know I have begun a newsletter where I update you on any content that will be coming out in the future. And sometimes I like to include personal stories of like how I scored 64 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM in a PC for $650. That will be in the first newsletter that I release. If you are interested in reading about those stories and knowing about the future content that's going to come out on this channel, I have a free version of the newsletter where you can check it out and be involved and see all those things. That link is in the description below. In addition, I do offer a paid version. On this channel, I do like to give away PCs. In fact, the last video I released was me giving my brother, I tricked him into reviewing a gaming PC for my channel where I actually gave him the PC for free at the end because it was his birthday. So on this channel, I love to do giveaways and I feel like it's important to give back to the community. So on the newsletter, I do offer a paid subscription for $5 a month, where if you are on that for 3 months, 2 times a year, I give a PC away to the subscribers on the newsletter. So consider that. Also, there are other options to give more. So let's go ahead and jump into the gameplay and see, does the RAM really impact your performance that much? Okay, so we've got the first game, Arc Raiders, loaded up. I am going to show you guys here that we are running, if you can see here, at the 4800 mega transfers per second, I guess is the technical term, not megahertz, whatever. I have everything set at the very lowest. So we're starting out on the lower speed of the RAM. So everything is set all the way down to low. We're just going to run around for a second. So, you know, we're using 16 gigs of RAM. We're sitting at 112 FPS. The game looks really solid, is really smooth, very responsive. I'm not seeing anything that, is showing me it should be running poorly or, okay, so it does look kind of blobby on the low, like you can see off here in the back. It does look kind of, Just also, I'm using a mouse that I don't normally use, so it's very sensitive on me, and this is not what I would normally be playing at. So let's go ahead and turn everything up to as high as it can go, and we're gonna see if we're gonna use more RAM, what the FPS does, and again, the graphics card, the processor, all those things do impact this, but this is while we're still on the 4800 megahertz. So let's just remember we were at like 120 FPS using 16 gigs of RAM. So now we're at Epic. We're up to 17 gigs of RAM. We're down to 80 FPS. Game obviously looks significantly better, down to 75 FPS. Still feels really smooth. I'm not noticing anything that like jump out to me and this isn't a controlled environment, right? Like I'm not in a fight. I'm not, going out there and looking at arc, but the game looks high quality. What is that? Is that an arc? That looks like some blurring. You guys might not have seen that. So that gives me a good idea of like at this lower speed what it might look like. So let's go ahead and jump to Black Myth Wukong, do the same, and then we'll up the speed so that we can see if there's a difference. All right, now we've got Black Myth Wukong loaded up, and as I mentioned, we're gonna start at everything with the lowest settings possible. So the super resolution is all the way down to 25, ray tracing is off. This should have let me do low on everything. We're gonna go ahead and apply this. So even on low settings, you guys can see here the Black Myth Wukong uses significantly more RAM. So wow, that is really slow and hitchy. Also, the game looks really rough, but we're still using 15 gigs of RAM here. Yeah, so that's quite a bit, and it's running kind of poorly, to be honest. That's really surprising. Although I guess it is because I'm on the 25 resolution, so it's having to scale it very strangely. Let's go ahead and up all the settings to see what difference that makes. So we're gonna go ahead and put this all the way up to 100. It's gonna tell me it doesn't wanna do that, which is understandable. So again, 1440p here. We're gonna do cinematic, confirm. Ooh, that got a lot slower. We're still sitting at 15 gigs of RAM used. There's definitely a lot more latency. We obviously dipped a lot in the FPS. Wow, it takes a long time to move and catch up. I don't know if you guys are getting like the blur on your screen, but it's pretty blurry on my side. So let's go ahead and real quick, because I'm not supposed to run this at this 100%. I think that's probably considered like 4K. I think 75 is where it normally recommends. So let's just drop it down to that real quick. Okay, so we jumped up to 40 FPS. Okay, that's much better. You still get, I don't like that Black Myth did this, but maybe it's just because of the graphics card that's in there and the processor. I don't know. But still sitting under, still sitting under 15 gigs of RAM. So that seems like a good spot to, let's go ahead and enable XMP to get this up to the 6,000 megahertz and see if it does make a difference on these two games. All right, now we are on the 6,000 mega transfers per second. I'm gonna bring you guys in a little bit closer just so you can see that real quick. There you go. So we're gonna go ahead and get into some gameplay and basically just determine, does it actually matter? So show you here real fast. We are on all low to start again. Everything is on the lowest settings possible. And this is without any kind of frame generation or anything like that. So you can see, I believe we were only using 11 or 12 gigs of RAM before. We've gone up significantly. I think we were sitting around 115, 120 FPS. Let's look at the game itself. Still kind of blobby on low settings. This is 1440p, but very, very smooth. Okay, so now we've dipped down and it is raining. Again, these aren't perfect settings or perfect scenarios to put yourself in. Obviously you could tell if there's a big difference or not. If you're on a different map, there's different settings, different, rain, whatever it might be. Oh yeah, that looks very blobby on low. So let's go ahead and max everything out. I think I didn't realize there was cinematic on the last one either. So We're going to stick with the epic settings because that's what I did before. Wow. It jumped up to almost 17 gigs of RAM there, and it dropped us down to 55. But as far as the game itself looks, I mean, the rain probably is a big factor on this. I feel like that's probably a denominator that we can't really factor in on there. Oh, that felt slow. Interesting. This motherboard might not like it. Look, we're up to 17 gigs of RAM here, guys. Very interesting here. I do kind of want to engage a little bit here just to see, you know, I know that rain is playing a big factor into it, but I do want to just check here. Here we go. Let's just fight this arc raider. I don't care if I die. Wow, that feels really slow. The game looks like really incredible, but it's like, woo, I'm gonna die and I don't care. Wow, that thing's not going down. Wow, it's not going down at all. 17 gig. I mean, this is responsive. It's still playing. It's just the graphics are so ridiculously high. This does like no damage. Okay, I mean, honestly, it's still very playable, but I'm not feeling like this is like a massive improvement over the other one. I think that it perhaps like slightly higher quality. Oh, you can shoot the wings off. I didn't know that. That's cool. Stop moving. Oh, okay. Oh, I missed, guys. Oh. Oh, someone else killed it. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know that I'm seeing any kind of performance improvement on this. Let's go ahead and call it here. Let's try Black Myth Wukong, see if there's a difference on there, and then we'll jump onto the AM4 PC and just kind of identify. But it is interesting that when we upped the speed of the RAM, it decided to use a lot more of it. So maybe that is a factor. Like if you are kind of limited on the RAM that you have, you should run it at a lower speed because maybe games will eat it up more. I don't know. Now we've got Black Myth Wukong loaded up on the 6,000 mega transfers per second setting on the RAM. Show you guys here. So just to kind of keep things as close as possible, I went to the super resolution of 25 again. No ray tracing, everything low. Now, I will say the last time whenever I went down to the super low resolution of 25, it was really kind of hitchy and glitchy in the beginning, but I don't know if it just needed a second to load that, but this is significantly smoother. Again, this might not be a factor, and it seems like we're using less RAM because I think we were at 15 gigs the last time. FPS-wise, I don't remember what we were on this low setting, but it seems to be holding fine here at this low setting. The game, let me see if there's like, yeah, there's still like the shadiness around him, but it actually seems less. Oh. Wait, how did I don't want to, get me out of this. How did I turn into a frog? Yeah, it seems like there's less blurriness here on this low. That's interesting. Okay, so let's go ahead and crank everything up all the way up again. All the way up to 100, and then put this on cinematic. Apply. I'm curious to see if our RAM usage skyrockets. Weren't we using 15, 16 gigs when we were on the 5600? I'm very confused. Now, we are getting, actually, I think we're getting about the same or less FPS. The visual quality might be slightly better, but we're still getting a lot of like the slow blurriness whenever you try to move quickly. This is definitely not playable. Let's drop it down to the 75 resolution like we did in the previous setting here. Apply that. So this should put it at a playable 36 FPS, you know, not getting quite as blurry. I can't believe we're only sitting at 14 gigs of RAM. I don't know if it's just because it's a faster speed or what, but again, this is a really small sample size, so we can't like say this is infinitely the answer. Obviously, you know, some of you might use your computer for productivity like work or school or other things. So that RAM speed will affect it, but in these just 2 games, I'm really not seeing a difference. In fact, it's possible that I noticed at the slower speed it performed better, which could be the motherboard. It could be the processor and the graphics card that's paired with it. So I don't know. Let's go ahead and jump on the AM4 platform and notice or pay attention, like if it's just 2 completely different sticks of RAM, if that has any influence over it at all. Now we are on the AM4 PC here with the 8 gigabytes of RAM. I did want to say before we move forward, I did go back and watch. Arc Raiders on the other computer actually used the same amount of RAM in both settings, so it didn't really make an impact. So really the only spot that we noticed any difference at all was Black Myth Wukong. I think it used maybe 1 more gig, and the performance really seemed the same. Again, this is not perfect. There's a lot of outside factors, and it's not going to be the greatest comparison, but it can give you kind of an idea. And I think here we're going to see that this 8 gigabytes is going to be extremely limiting really quickly. So let me go ahead and take you guys in here and show you so that you can verify it. We are in fact on 2133 of 8 gigabytes of RAM. So we're gonna test this. I have a feeling that it's not going to love it, but we're gonna give it a shot and just kind of see how it goes. So we're on all the way down to low right now. So we're still on 1440p, haven't changed that, no frame gen of any kind. Oh, let's go ahead and put on low real quick. Don't know how we got an epic. Come on. Oh yeah, you can see where the less amount of RAM is definitely impacting how slow this is going on the screen here. Okay, we're on low. We're basically at the limits here. So again, all factors aren't the same. This is a 9070 XT, which is a superior graphics card, and it's a Ryzen 5 5600X, which isn't that much slower than the 8700F. In fact, it might be pretty close. So we're using 7 gigs of RAM. You can see the FPS there. Quality-wise, even on low, this might look better just because of that graphics card. But the game is really smooth. I'm not noticing any kind of problems looking around, movement. We're on low, things still look like a blob. Like you can see, wow, you can see that a lot. I wonder if that's the RAM. Like you see, it hasn't even rendered in here, and then we run up. You guys might not be able to see it because I'm not screen capturing, which I know people yell at me sometimes about. But anyway, oh yeah, things are real blobby. If you can see that tree back there, it's just like a shape. So this is gonna break it. I already know it's going to. And we're gonna see a massive difference on the other one just because of the amount of RAM. We're gonna stick with Epic because I didn't realize there was cinematic, and I want to try to keep it as close as possible if preferable. So let's go ahead and go to Epic. And it's not, so remember on the other computer, it was using 15 gigs of RAM. It's not going above the 8 here, but there has been some stuttering. The blobs got a lot better. You can see the trees from really far away. Wow, wow. Wait, can you game on 8 gigabytes of RAM? Surely not, right? Like we've been told 16 is the minimum. Okay, so there is a little stutter. You guys might see some of that in here. But honestly, this is kind of playable. No way. Can you actually play on 8 gigs of RAM? And you can see we're getting 100 FPS. This is on Epic with only 8 gigs. Very interesting. Okay. Cool. Let's go ahead and jump over to Black Myth Wukong. We'll test that settings, and then we'll throw in the 16 gig at 3200 megahertz and see if it really did make a difference, and then we'll wrap this thing up. We've got Black Myth Wukong loaded up here. So I will show you guys the settings we've got just to keep everything consistent from the AM4 and AM5 platforms. So we're down to the 25 super resolution. ray tracing off, everything is on low. You can see the RAM usage, obviously the FPS. Yeah, the face here looks really bad. It's not super blurry whenever I try to move. The graphic fidelity and quality is pretty terrible. I'm surprising we're not redlining even on low because this is a very high usage game. Even on low, it still feels like, yeah, it still feels like there might be some stuttering on low, and it's very poor on the quality. So again, this is because this is just 8 gigs. I don't know if the 2133 would impact it as much if it was 16 gigs. That would be an interesting study. We're possibly going to break it here going to the cinematic settings, but it's what we're going to do. So we're not going to go to the 100. We're just going to go straight to 75. And it's probably about to just crash. So let's see what happens. Wow, it's working. Oh, wow, it is unresponsive. Oh, and there's some ghosting. I don't know if you guys can see that on your end. I've never actually experienced ghosting before. Woo! Yeah, we've pushed this 8 gigabytes to the limit, and it's wow, it's real bad. Well, I guess if this were a video on could 8 gigabytes of RAM get you through in the modern day and age, the answer would be absolutely not. Yeah, it's very unresponsive and slow. Oh my gosh, it feels like my DPS got dropped by like 5 or something. Ooh. Okay. So that gives us an answer on this 8 gigabytes at 2133. Let's go ahead and throw in the 16 gigabytes at 3200 and see. I assume we're going to notice a difference here. All right, so we've got arc raiders loaded up on the 3200 megahertz. I'll take you guys in here just so you can quickly see that and verify 3200 megahertz, just the one stick at 16 gigs. Quick thing that I wanted to note before we jump in here while I'm fixing this tripod, and probably zoom out just a hair. I wasn't even aware of this, and I did a whole video on this PC, which is a really sweet setup, by the way. I called it mid-level CPU with high-end GPU. This motherboard tried to default the speed to 2133. Didn't even know that, so I think I recorded an entire video and ran this PC at 2133, which is just absolutely wild to me that I have a 3200 megahertz speed and it's defaulting it to 2133, and I didn't know that. So this whole video might just be a great message for you guys to check your BIOS and make sure that you're not running at a much slower speed, and if it actually even matters at all. So we're here in Arc Raiders. We have literally only 16 gigs of RAM, and it's running it at 14 gigs, 14 and a half. And it's interesting to note that when we had 8 gigs, it would just go up to 7 and a half. But as soon as we put in more, it started running more. And we saw that we got up to what, 16, 17 on the 32 gig. So we are back on low settings here, 1440p still. Everything's on low, and we're on the 16 gigs at 3200. So it's 1,000, basically 1,000 megahertz, mega transfers, whatever you want to call it, faster. Still very blobby when we do low. So if you're running this game on low, I have a lot of respect for you. Or if you just don't care and you just care about performance. 70 FPS, this is a lot lower than we were getting on the AM5 platform. We were getting like 120 to 140 FPS on low, weren't we? So that the RAM might be showing a sign here. I don't think that this CPU is that much slower. I could be wrong, but the 8700F isn't that high. It's not that great compared to like a Ryzen 5 5600X. I mean, it's a little bit of a dated, CPU, but I think it's got some serious computing power, and this graphics card is much stronger than the 2080 Ti. Interesting. Okay, so that RAM could be playing a factor. The fact that it's 16 gigs, that might be the biggest thing we're seeing here, is that 8 versus 16 versus 32 does make a difference. Let's go ahead and turn everything up to epic. Now, I will say this as well. As soon as I plugged in this 16 gigs of RAM, I noticed, and you guys probably noticed there, it immediately shifted the settings, and I didn't have to wait like 10, 15 seconds in between. We're still, okay, the FPS are actually starting to creep up because I guess, no, they're still the same, and we're still using, did we go down? Weren't we using 13 or 14 gigs of RAM earlier? So, yeah, not a whole lot here. You know, the game does look a little better. It's not as blobby. There still are some areas where it's blobby, and I'm wondering if that is the RAM taking a while to render it in, or what's going on here? Why does that look so bad? Interesting. Is that just because I don't have enough RAM and it's not getting to push it? Because, you know, you saw on the AM5 platform that it was eating up 16, 17 gigs of RAM. Yeah, see, it's just, the trees aren't rendering in at all. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and try out Black Myth Wukong and see if there's a difference there. Black Myth Wukong loaded up here on the 16 gigs at 3200 megahertz. You can see we're using 11 and a half. I think maybe sometimes it'll spike up to 12. Wow, this is, I don't think we were nearing that many FPS on, the frame gen is off, isn't it? That's just showing you guys how strong, yeah, frame gen is off. There's no frame gen. That's just showing you guys how strong this 9070 XT is. This thing is a beast. So I don't think there's any ghosting. It's pretty responsive. Look at the frames we're getting. That's ridiculous, you guys. I know this is on low, but it's still on, well, no, the super resolution is at 25. So this is probably considered like 1080p or 720p or something. But this is ultra, ultra, ultra responsive. All right, let's go ahead and just up it to ultra on the 100% resolution and see if that makes, you know, a massive difference on here. We'll put it on cinematic. Wow. That's just the 9070 XT coming through, showing what a beast it is. Oh my gosh, that looks so good too. I'm just gonna say this as a side note. If you guys are considering a graphics card and you're going, oh, the 5070 Ti, the 5070 Ti is really expensive right now. It's potentially getting discontinued. This 9070 XT is a beast, and I am super excited to have it. Probably will use it for a long time in my own personal build, but like, look at the quality of that. This is on ultra and cinematic. We're getting 122 FPS, and this is on an older CPU. The ghosting, or not the ghosting, but like the fuzziness around his hair is almost completely gone. Wow, this is insanely high quality here. There's no latency whatsoever. So obviously this is performing significantly better than the 8 gigs of RAM did. But man, this is just making me excited to be on this 9070 XT. Cool. Let's go ahead and close things up and kind of give you guys my final thoughts on, does RAM speed really matter that much? So out of this, did we actually learn anything? You know, is there anything that we can actually take away from this that's going to be helpful for you guys moving forward? And I think the answer is the speed doesn't matter as much as maybe we might think it does. Now, again, this is not a perfect scenario because I do believe that there are tasks that when you are utilizing RAM and you have a faster speed, it will matter. The time it takes to pull up a website or potentially, you know, video editing, some of those kinds of other things are probably more speed influenced than gaming might be. However, I did notice that there is a massive difference in the amount of RAM that you do have, because the PC can just run differently when you have more. You saw here on this game, I mean, you guys can't see this number, but this is on the 16 gig. We were running at 11 gigs of RAM, whereas when we had 32 available, it was pushing 15 to 17 in our graders, you know? So I think that does matter. There is a difference, but it's more about the availability of RAM, not the speed. I'd be interested to see if you guys have done any of these kinds of tests yourself or have experience. I'd love to know. Leave a comment and tell me a little bit about that. Otherwise, you know, if you're in the market and you're looking for DDR5 and you come across some 4800 megahertz that's $50 or $100 cheaper for 32 gigs, I don't think it's bad that you pick it up. In fact, I would be willing to bet that probably 75% of you guys watching this video aren't even aware that your RAM is being downclocked based on your BIOS. So I don't think it's as important as we make it out to be. Now, if you guys are interested and you do enjoy this content, I would encourage you to check out the review I did of this PC where I titled it Mid-End CPU with a High-Level Graphics Card, because that goes more in depth in how you can save money in pairing two different components that maybe you would think it's gonna get really bottlenecked. That's an interesting one. Or if you guys would be interested, like I said, I do giveaways. I actually hosted an axe throwing competition where 25 people showed up in 35-degree weather with 20-mile-per-hour wind, and they threw axes to win a gaming PC. So if you'd like to watch either of those videos, be sure to check them out right here.